Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
White guys
talking about movies.
Yeah, we are the only
podcast about white dudes talking about movies.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
And we just saw everything.
Everywhere. All at once. We saw it all, Dave.
We saw it all.
All media.
Evelyn, I'm not your husband. I'm another version of him from another universe. I'm here because we need your help.
Very busy today. No time to help you.
Across the multiverse, I've seen thousands of Evelyns. You can access all their memories, their emotions, even their skills.
This is a movie that's it's been out for a while. I actually saw it like last week, and then I watched it again this morning.
I think it's excusable. Yeah, it's been gaining more and more theaters each week.
Yeah, and I think it's gaining more as it goes. And so, like, people are beginning to talk about it. It was either this or Ambulance, and I had been waiting to talk about this. And quite frankly, I don't know. I'm very not even on the fence. I'm very, like, a little done with Michael Bay and his, like, recklessness.
It's not even just the recklessness aside. I don't care about human life. I think I've gone on record as saying that many times. Kill as many people as you need to make Transformers, by all means. Sure. My problem with Michael Bay is that his movies suck now.
Yeah, they also suck.
Six Underground is one of the worst films I've ever seen because it is gibberish. That movie is incomprehensible.
Here's the other... I know we're not talking about this, or that's not what this is about, but, like, I do believe that if a director makes a couple shitty movies, it's like, all right, I'll give him another chance.
Yeah.
He's made like 6 terrible Transformers. And so at this point, it's like, you've had so many chances.
He's made like 3 good movies and a real phantasmagoria of the worst movies.
Exactly. And
a real kaleidoscope of awfulness.
Yeah, it's fool me 10 times.
Yeah.
Shame on me. So we're talking about this. This is the Daniels, who made Swiss Army Man, a film I had not seen.
I haven't seen it either.
I guess I'll have to. Although I know there are people who didn't like Swiss Army Man like this movie. This is it's the multiverse movie. You probably don't know much about it. It's best, I think, not knowing much about it going into it.
Yeah.
And I've kind of made my feelings known. So, Tom, how did you like this film?
I thought it was mostly pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah. I thought it was mostly pretty good. I don't think it's great.
That's fair.
But I liked it a lot. And I'm glad that it's gaining more traction. I saw in the producer's credits that it's executive produced by the Russo brothers. So, like, of course, it's going to gain momentum. But that's not a bad thing. That's like... I want big filmmakers like the Russo brothers to back smaller movies like this and get them seen by more people. Yeah. So, I mostly liked it.
Yeah, I am a big fan of seeing a movie like this existing. Because this, for me, is very much the type of movies I've always wanted to make. And I would say I never had... I guess I'll frame it as I never had the talent. Or like I never could fully realize like a concept like this, which is something that is both extremely weird, justifies its weirdness. I would argue all the weirdness is justified. It's not random for the sake of being random.
There's one moment that there's one moment that kind of pissed me off, but the rest of it.
We'll get into it. Yeah. But the fact that it can be so weird and then also so emotional.
Yes.
I really, really appreciate that. And then they can have fucking action in it. And on top of it, Short Round's there, just killing it.
Yeah, he's great. Jonathan K. Kwan. And then, of course, Michelle Yeoh is always great.
He's actually going by Ki Hoi Kwan now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Apparently, so I was reading a brief thing about him is that he kind of fizzled out of acting because it was kind of like he didn't feel represented, too.
That's very easy to see.
Yeah.
Don't doubt that.
Yeah, because as a child actor, he was a tremendous talent. And in the back of my head, I always just assumed, the child actors, they don't go on to do anything. But he did, like, as a teen changed his name to Jonathan to get more, like, roles, and then, like, vanished for 20 years. Mm-hmm. He's been gone for 20 years. And seeing him in this, it's like, holy shit, he's so fucking good. It's just such a delight to see him.
Yeah.
In this.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is so. Should we explain? I'm gonna just say to people, I think personally, people should just see this movie.
Yeah,
and not listen to the podcast.
All you really need to know going in is that it's what you learned from the trailer. If you've not seen the trailer yet, it's that it's Michelle Yeoh running a laundromat with her family. She feels like she's stuck, and then a different version of her husband comes to tell her, "You're actually like the key to saving the multiverse. You must tap into the skills of your other multiverse selves to help us."
Right.
As Michelle Yeoh into the Michelle Yeoh-niverse.
Yeah. It should be noted that when a different version of her husband, it's her regular husband suddenly just changes his demeanor, takes off his glasses, and is acting like a different person.
Yeah.
Because the idea is everybody's quantum leaping.
Yes.
And what the movie does that I really like is there's rules to the multiverse, and it's silly. It's stupid, but it's rules nonetheless. Mm-hmm. And they don't tell you the rules until a little later. So they're doing things that you're like, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
Why is he eating that chapstick? Mm-hmm. Which is the idea that, like, there was one universe that was the first universe to develop multiverse travel. And they learned that in order to, you can gain the abilities of other versions of yourselves. But the farther you go into, like, the multiverse, like deviations that go way farther than your regular life, the idea that life is a series of choices and they branch off. So, like, she has to, like, so in order to get into a world where you're, say, a martial arts master and you're not that at all, you have to do something incredibly weird to slingshot yourself to that point, which is a great way of saying that they've created a device that allows people to do really fucking weird shit throughout the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which causes a fight where two men have things up their asses.
Yes. They have they have phallic statues up their asses. One of them is just so clearly a butt plug that when Jamie Lee Curtis first displays her trophies that just look like butt plugs, I was just like, those are just butt plugs.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, a man sits on them to unlock his potential later.
Yeah. It's a movie that, knowing what I know about Swiss Army Man, it's like there's a bit of them that they're idiots in a good way. Like, they like stupid humor. Mm-hmm. They like gross out humor. And so watching this movie, I don't know what the audience was like for you, but both times I've seen it, they were reacting the same way watching Jackass, where people were hollering and laughing and like going, oh God, like shit like that. There was the audiences, like both times when the credits rolled, the audiences were all like, woof. Like everybody kind of like let out noises and was rather stunned because it's quite a fucking ride as a film. It's both weird and oddly like accessible.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where I guess what it made me think about is that as we grow as a society, we're able to handle more and more complex ideas in films, right? Sci-fi just does that to us, you know?
Yeah.
Like we were doing stuff about space travel, time travel. Now we're talking about multiverse. And so the movie like capitalizes on that by being really fast moving and really whiplashy where it takes you
in some instances.
Sure, yeah. But it will take you from I mean, fast moving, I guess, emotionally, where it takes you from these moments where it's like her husband is crying because their relationship is failing to like, hot dog fingers.
Yeah.
And then making you feel for the hot dog fingers world. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that the general theme of the movie is about the absurdness of life and how people are absurd and silly. And it's all about kind of just being kind to people and accepting that everybody has the right to feel something and is a human.
Yeah, everybody has their own symphony of choices choices and experiences that led them to this exact moment. And yeah, it's a meditation on a lot of different things about the nature of existence, but sort of like when it's like a meditation on how to get around like an existential crisis, I think, is like ultimately what it's about, because it's like, well, what is the meaning of life if everything ends? And the meaning of, well, not necessarily the meaning of life, but the value of life is in the fact that everything ends.
Exactly. Like, it's not joy versus nihilism.
Right.
It's joy out through nihilism.
Right. They make one of the movie's most profound statements, in addition to saying, well, the fact that life is fleeting is what makes it so valuable. But that's not really like a profound, I mean, it is a profound idea, but it's a familiar one.
Yeah.
The idea where we finally are shown her husband Wayman's worth that she's been overlooking her whole life, where it's
such a good moment.
You think the reason, because he's nice to a fault, like he's nice almost to his own detriment sometimes, just because he's trying to minimize conflict and keep everybody happy, and but he just explains to her, one version of him explains to her, look, I'm not like some naive idiot. I am making an active choice. Like, I'm deciding to be nice in the face of all of this.
Yeah, he says, this is how I fight.
This is how I fight. Yeah,
you consider yourself a fighter. I'm also a fighter. I'm not some like naive idiot. I am making the choice to be kind in an unkind world. Yeah. That's how I survive. Mm-hmm. And they set that up because what happens when so at the beginning, it's her going with her family to be, I believe, audited by Jamie Lee Curtis. And Jamie Lee Curtis, who's killing it. Everybody's firing on all cylinders in this movie.
Yeah, you can tell this was just like a movie, like an idea and a story that just really spoke to everybody in this movie, because they're doing things like all the main actors, Jamie Lee and Michelle Yeoh and Ke Huy Quan, they're all doing things that we've not really seen them do before.
Yeah. Is the daughter Quan?
No, Ke Huy Quan, isn't that his name?
Sorry. No, that's Short Round.
Yeah.
Who's the daughter, like, you're right. Everybody's doing a thing.
Yeah,
I was just going to point out that I love that the daughter...
Yeah, I'm not too sure, because I'm not that... I know I've seen her before. I know she does a lot of TV, but I'm not as familiar with her career.
Yeah. She does things like she's singing and shit like that. Yeah. And, like, there's that... I think every actor saw, like, hey, do you want to play a role where you're swapping constant multiverse versions of yourself? And it's like, you mean play, like, 6 different characters? Yes. Like, every actor would want to do this because they're all killing it,
and you get
for
to
that
be
reason.
Silly and surreal, but also they all get these really powerful emotional scenes.
That's the other thing. The point of the film is that everybody matters. So characters that are treated like two-dimensionally are at least given some moment where it shows what they want and in them getting what they want. So just going back to, so they're talking to Jamie Lee Curtis getting audited, and she's being distracted because she's getting pulled into the multiverse, and her husband is talking to Jamie Lee Curtis, and she can't hear it, and she's just like, oh, my silly husband's going to make it worse. And then Jamie Lee Curtis is like, okay, you have one more chance. And that you learn, that's set up, and then at the end he does it again in an even more impossible scenario.
Yep.
And that's when she's like, wait, you just talked to them? And that's when we realize he's kind of the key the whole movie.
Yeah.
And he's treated as whenever he turns into the badass multiverse version, she's like thankful, and when he goes back, she's like, "Oh, it's you again." Like that idea is he's constantly dismissed,
but he's still the same guy.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes her a long time to figure that out.
Yeah,
they start at the beginning, even earlier than that scene where she starts berating him for making the cookies for Jamie Lee Curtis, like the previous. Like, I don't know why you made that lady cookies. She's terrible to us. It's like, well,
right.
I'm keeping us afloat by making her cookies.
Yeah. Later, she's like, "Thanks for the cookies. They're delicious."
Yeah, it's like I'm forming human connections with people.
Yeah, and that's sort of the whole arc is about that. Because we haven't gotten into the plot too much, and because I'm just kind of hoping the people listening have seen it. But like, that is that the whole arc to me is that it's the Patton Oswalt quote about it's chaos, be kind, or
be nice.
That's basically the movie, which is like, nothing matters. So it's like, you could just crawl into a dark hole, into an everything bagel, or you could fucking choose to just be kind to people and just get through it that way and find each other as best you can. And that's what it's all about. You could say it's about family, but it's not necessarily family.
Not necessarily, but it's that idea coupled with a couple of other ideas. The other big one is the moment where she's ready to let her daughter pass into oblivion, and her daughter is still like that. That's the main conflict: is nihilism versus life has meaning. Is no, it doesn't. Look at how everything ends. It's so absurd. It's all stupid. I just don't want to exist anymore, so I can cut out all this noise, and so I don't feel so sad all the time. And her daughter says, like, what's the point? It's every good thing that you like. You can, like, Michelle Yeoh sees in the different universes that these nice, sweet moments are very fleeting. But then she says, well, like, her daughter is like, well, there's only a couple of microseconds that you're clinging to. Like, that's why you want to continue to exist in all of this. And she's like, well, yeah, if those two microseconds are all that I get, then I am going to cherish those seconds. Right. And so it's that idea too. And it's not just to be kind in the face of wild chaos. It's finding the value in the impermanence of things.
Yeah. And I can't stress this enough. This is all in a film where two guys stick statues or awards up their asses, and a woman wields a dog like a ninja weapon.
Where Jenny Slate wields a dog like a ninja weapon. She wields a dog like Go-Go and Kill Bill.
Yeah, yes. There's a few, the fanny pack as well. It was just like, oh, fuck. Yeah, where, again, it's kind of the point, though, is that it's everything. As the title says, like, it's all the things. It's all the absurdities, including beating up 2 security guards with rubber dicks. Like, it's just... It manages to kind of include all the absurdities with all the emotions, and that's a tall order. Like, that's really impressive to me, how much they were able to do within this parameters, within this message. Like, it's a big swing. This movie's a huge swing.
Yes, it is.
And I'm sort of enamored with it. I can understand that there could be like issues with it and stuff like that. I'm fascinated to know what you're gonna say. There's one like thing going around about it on the internet.
Oh yeah,
involving Jenny Slate, which is and this didn't even occur to me. This didn't occur to Hannah. I was talking to her. Is that and I honestly think in order to make it's the big nose thing that it's a Jewish actress.
Yep.
I was talking to Hannah about this. She's not presented as like at no point do they say she's Jewish. It's a Jewish actress, but she's playing like just kind of a basic white chick. Like she's not like
she's playing aloof Hollywood chick.
Yeah, and so it's like I think it's reductive to frame it that way, but I see why people would be bothered by that for sure.
Yeah.
I also think it's kind of the point is that Michelle Yeoh's character is a shit in the beginning.
Yeah, you need to like that's
It's ignoring a lot of context.
Yes.
Like it's the same it's you have to ignore a lot of the ideas and themes and context of the film to reduce it to that.
I mean, it's
and
within
that's why that's like
it's within a scene where she's literally shaming her daughter for being, in her eyes, overweight and being gay.
exactly.
Like, you have to ignore that entire aspect of that scene. Like, she sucks in that scene.
It's sort of that thing where it's like
she's being it's within the theme of the movie too. She's reducing Jenny Slate's entire existence down to a cruel shorthand for her based on her physical appearance.
Exactly. And it's literally the point. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what it's a very film Twitter observation to be like, this is problematic. It's like the idea of when they're like, have you ever seen like think pieces about villains being like, oh yeah, the ones where it's like, is Tony Soprano problematic? And it's like, yeah.
Yes, he is.
That's literally the point of Tony Soprano.
There's a big problem that I've noticed when I was editing for Collider and just some of the submissions we get, and there's some of the garbage takes you'll see on film social media where people are having a real time differentiating between presenting something is not condoning it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of that where it's just, it's like, again, reductive. It's a really obtuse interpretation of something that you have to ignore a lot of context. What it reminded me of is, I don't think it's that new, because it reminded me of when Terminator 3 came out and there was some heat that Arnold Schwarzenegger was beating up a woman in that film. And it was like, it's a robot.
It's a killer robot.
Yeah, I didn't
see any of those takes.
Yeah, there was a bit of that, and it was like, what are you guys talking about? It's a fucking robot.
Yeah, and I think it's more toward it's a very childish thing. I think it's what we were ranting about in like the Tomorrow War, where it's like we're getting off on a bit of a tangent here, but like, okay,
yeah.
So like, if you're just consuming 4-quadrant bullshit from Disney the whole time, then you will not understand that sometimes protagonists are flawed.
Right.
Sometimes protagonists aren't even good people, like in The Sopranos.
Yeah, or like a Scorsese movie.
Yeah.
Where we've gotten too used to the idea of like the cool anti-hero too sometimes.
Who's just automatically good, just like saintly good. And it's, well, no, people are flawed. And interesting stories tend to involve flawed characters.
Exactly. And not necessarily doing it by condoning them sometimes. Like, this is about her growing.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. She's a flawed character who goes through an arc. Yeah. So yeah, it's a little silly, especially since that laundromat scene, it's a group of people who are all being like, she's not seeing them as people. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
And then at the end, all those actors, including that actress, what's her name?
Jenny Slate.
Jenny Slate.
You don't know Jenny Slate?
I know the face, and I don't know. It doesn't matter.
She's on SNL, Big Mouth.
See, I don't watch SNL. Okay. She's in Venom?
Yeah, she's in Venom.
Oh, good for her.
Anyway.
See SNL, that
Big Mouth. She was on Big Mouth for a while.
Yeah, but that's cartoon characters.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But anyway, she's one of many people who then at the end you see come back, at least a fraction of a bit, and you show that like, oh yeah, these are humans. Like the weird kind of creepy dude who's like, your perfume reminds me of my wife. And then that gets brought back and shit like that. It's all about, it's about the fact that, everybody is somebody. Jamie Lee Curtis, the best thing they do with her character, because they present her like a fucking monster at first.
Yeah, she's just awful. Yeah.
And then she literally turns into like, when she gets like possessed by her multiverse self, is turns into like a
pro wrestling ogre. Yeah. It's very fun. She drop kicks a short round like fucking 25 feet.
Yeah. But at the end, it's about compassion towards her.
I like that was a slow reveal too. Sort of like how her husband is actually fighting where she is not fighting. She's kind of given up.
Right.
And she mistakes his kindness for not fighting. But so we learn that in order for her to get to her martial arts universe, she has to tell Jamie Lee Curtis, I love you, and she has to mean it. And then that starts to build into the hot dog finger universe where they are together. They're in a relationship.
Yes. I loved that and the Raccacooey.
The Raccacooey.
Because they're both presented as, look at how silly these worlds are, and then you become invested in the worlds, and then you feel compassion for the characters, where you're like, oh, I want him to get his raccoon back.
Yeah.
And again, that's all part of the theme, which is like, we're going to blast you with the most absurd ideas and thoughts, and then we're going to like humanize it all.
Yeah.
And that's just really fucking smart.
Yeah. So bringing that stuff up is, I'll start there because I have two things that sort of struck me as I was watching it that prevented me from calling it a great film.
Yeah, I'm excited for this.
And this first one I'll start with. It's the more minor of the two. It's extremely minor. I didn't even really flag this. I was like, well, okay, you just want to have your cake and eat it too. And in a movie like this, that's fine. They are very specific. You mentioned Quantum Leap. The rules are specific to that level of specificity, where it's like they present the idea of the multiverse as specifically being a product of the incalculable number of decisions you make to bring you to the person you are. And so that's the existence of the multiverse is representing all of the different choices you can make. That's why there's an infinite number of them. But so they say at one point her husband says to her, we've been alive. Like, think of how many different universes, how many different possibilities of us, of the two of us, exist for people who have lived whole lifetimes, because they're both in their 50s. I think Michelle Yeoh might even be a little bit older.
Yeah.
But they're very clearly solidly middle age, going on into old age. So they establish the idea that the multiverse exists because it is this infinite pattern, or tapestry rather, of choices that are possible for us to make. So then why would there be universes where we have hot dog fingers, where we exist as animated characters, where we're piñatas, et cetera, et cetera? That is not a possibility of choices we can make. That's just, you want to have surreal, weird universes.
Well, okay. I'm gonna. So I think you're half right. I think the world where they're here's the other factor that
also
I think
the universe
implying.
where they're back in time in like feudal China.
Oh yeah, well, so here's my rebuttal to that. I can't justify the cartoon ones. What the implication there is, because I think they briefly explain it, and then they move on, which is when they get to the hot dog fingers, they do a quick parody of 2001, where the monkey with the hot dog fingers is killing the monkeys with the regular hands, and the implication is then all evolution sprouted from that, right?
Yes.
So what you can argue is that, yes, the multiverse is the result of all of our different choices, but all of our choices affect each other, right? So like that is a choice. That is a multiverse where the choice was made early on that was how our evolution went. And like that is her version of herself in that world. But like it's two different factors, right? Like it's a world where that had happened. That wasn't her choice, but that's still like someone's choice and a multiverse branching off.
Sure.
So I think that justifies it, because it's like
it justifies that.
Yeah, and I think
not the piñatas, not the cartoon, not them being back in time.
Well, back in time, they never say they're back in time, right?
Yes, they do.
Do they?
Her daughter says maybe not in different dimensions, but what if outside of this time, and then they go back to where they're fighting in like Crouching Tiger times, and it looks very Crouching Tiger. That is
very weird. That
it's an extremely minor. It's just like, you just wanted to do the Rick and Morty thing, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I don't care.
I like nitpicking this. My only defense would be that the idea is that the daughter has fractured her mind and sees all realities at once, and like. You could imply that she's not actually bringing them back in time. She's bringing them to a reality that feels back in time to demonstrate that. Or that time is just very loose for her as well, I guess. It still doesn't justify the piñatas because, well, the only last justification I can make is the one line she says that I love, which was like, we were sure the sun revolved around the earth, and then we thought there was just our universe. Who knows what kind of new shit will make us, or new discoveries will make us feel like small pieces of shit. And so you could argue that there's like more metaphysical reasons and like spiritual reasons why there'd be a world where there are pinatas, but that's me doing a lot of work for the movie. So
you're doing a lot of work for a movie that already does a lot of work, and that's the segue into my biggest problem with the movie, is that god damn is there an exposition dump for about 45 minutes.
Yeah, I guess, but it's also layered with a lot of fun shit going on.
Yeah, but it's interrupted for me too often by very, very long stretches of Short Round and then David Lopan, who is her dad.
Right. We haven't talked about him.
Oh shit! What is his? Fuck, James Hong.
Yeah.
Where it's just like they're trading off at one point, but they just have to deliver pages and pages of exposition telling us how the multiverse works. I don't think nearly all of it was necessary, and it was a struggle to get over that first half for me. Like the movie from kind of the first action scene with her husband where he beats up people with the fanny pack all the way to,
I'd say it's when the villain shows up.
Gosh. Yeah, even a little bit past that, to where she first shows up and then they go into the office with the secret door and she has to tie him up. It's basically all the way up until she has to get them out of the safe in the room by tapping into a multiverse version of herself where she can sing, so she has like increased lung capacity so she can hold her breath through all the tear gas that's been shot at them by the SWAT team. So it's a stretch of like 45 minutes where it's just a couple of cool, fun things and then another completely stopping the movie for us to just spit out it felt like thousands of words of explanation for how all this shit worked. And it was boring the shit out of me for a while.
Wow. That's really interesting. I did not notice that.
Yeah.
I legitimately, and you're not wrong. There's a lot of exposition there. I think I just really enjoyed watching this world unfold because it's all bullshit. That's the other layer of this movie, and they know it when they're making it. It's all silly bullshit. Like, when they show them in their world and they're in the, like, it's like 90s, like Johnny Mnemonic aesthetic, where it's like, oh yeah, they know this is silly. Yeah. They're trying to make it silly. And I liked that the movie had to do so much work to justify a ridiculous premise.
It didn't have to do that much work is my argument.
That's what I was getting at is that you're right that it probably didn't have to.
Yeah.
And in fact, some of the times there's a part where he explains like where they have to do bizarre shit to Slingshot and she's like, that doesn't make sense. And he's like, exactly.
Yeah.
And that they kind of could fall in that a little more if they wanted to, for sure. I enjoyed all the stupid exposition. I can't even justify why. I was very enamored with the movie from start to finish, and I think it had to do with the performances and just the joy of the weirdness of the sequences between those expositions.
I felt like it took too long for the movie to really start. Because it doesn't really start until after the first hour mark.
Having watched it twice, I do think you're right that there's this feeling of pacing in the first half.
Yeah.
That it definitely feels like it drags a little. There's things that I love about it that I feel like maybe they had to do a lot of work to maintain. I like that the main timeline, they never leave that building.
Nope.
I love that about it. I love that they never get out of the fucking building. And yet the movie feels huge because of all the places you go. It's a lot that they're juggling.
For me, it doesn't feel huge until
it starts going around
well into the movie. And that's kind of the problem for me. That's like I felt the fact that they were not leaving this IRS building for over an hour.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Like I really felt that.
I definitely felt that there were pacing issues in the first half, that it felt it slows down for sure.
It's not that it slows down, it's it starts slow.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It does start slow. I don't know. Watching the first scene in the laundromat where she's running around, I loved that scene because it was so chaotic.
Yeah, and it was setting it up.
It's more of like
perfectly.
Yeah, I also loved the first part where she first learns about the multiverse, and it's two people being like, there's nothing more important than the conversation we're having right now.
Yeah.
I love that shit. I think it's really like, it does include some of the fight scenes. I think it is like, it's kind of that part where she's not the one yet, you know, where he leaves. I think that's where it drags a bit, where it's like, it's kind of spinning its wheels at that point, and it could condense it a bit there.
Yeah, it's like it felt a lot to me like The Matrix, like trying to rewatch The Matrix, because once you know what the game is, the first half of The Matrix is a fucking slog.
Yeah, because you're like, just start
like
kicking each other.
Figure it out. Like, I have already figured this out, and like at this point, Rick and Morty's been one of the biggest animated comedies anyway on TV for several years. Into the Spider-Verse, one of the biggest movies of all time. And the fucking Far From Home, another one of the biggest movies of all time. Like, we understand a lot about the multiverse in pop culture terms, so we really don't need this much explanation.
Yeah,
like, we already understood it going into the movie.
So, from a critical eye, what I think I would cut down is the alpha world and like needing to know about their world.
Yeah.
Because I think obviously you have to explain the multiverse even quickly for just people. You're right, though, is that I didn't feel like they spent a lot of time explaining what a multiverse is.
No.
But they sort of explain the mechanics of their end. It's just like, I don't know if it's all silly bullshit. I don't need to know too much there.
I
think they had to explain the slingshotting only because otherwise we don't get, people sticking things up their butts. Like, they needed to explain. I'm glad they I like how they rolled that out where he's chewing used gum and you're like, what the fuck is he doing? And then he has to give himself paper cuts and it's like, oh, what the fuck? And then you finally learn what they're doing. And that's, I appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's obviously there's things that they needed to let us know. It just felt like there was so much setup. Like the movie truly, like, I'm not exaggerating, it does not start until like the hour mark. It's kind of when it really starts.
It does plenty of stuff before that.
It
like the fanny pack fight. They do stuff that I think they were aware of that, and they did stuff to try to amend that. Whereas they have Short Round kind of be the action guy at first. And then it gets passed on to Michelle Yeoh.
The other side of that coin, though, is that it just makes it take longer by adding that stuff in.
Right.
I had a bit of an edge on the doing weird shit. Because I did have like the when he eats the chapstick, I was like, what the like, I did not understand what's happening. Or eats the gum off the underside of the desk. But as soon as like he's talking to his people and his guys in the van, as it were. And they're telling them, okay, like, the best probability, here's the best probability, give yourself paper cuts. Like, I kind of figured that out just based on that because of an anime I watched. It's an anime called Darker Than Black, where it's people have these powers, and the way that they do these powers is they have to do something called an obeisance. So it's like, yeah, they have these incredible mutant powers, but every time in order to use it, they have to do something really strange. Like, one guy has to eat a shitload in order to use his power. So it's stuff like that. So I almost said, I think I might have even said aloud in the theater to myself, I was like, oh, he's doing an obeisance.
It's a great concept.
Yeah. And it makes sense because it's like it deals with the probability and it ties it ties in with the idea of like infinite choices.
Right, I would say it makes as much sense as it needs to.
Well, and then they use it to establish an important theme and story beat by having the first thing Michelle Yeoh has to do is tell Jamie Lee Curtis, "I love you."
Right. That was so good. I love that there's certain things like that. That watching this a second time, there's so much more intent that I didn't notice.
Yeah.
This is a little one, and all movies love to do this. When they're first talking about the villain, about the daughter. They're in the break room and she's holding an everything bagel because they're eating bagels, like little things like that where it's like, oh, you're doing stuff. You're making a movie. Yeah. I love that. I love that you're making a movie.
I just get so delighted when I watch a movie and I feel like there's intent behind it.
Right. And I think I can't I can't stress how important that is, because a movie like this, I think, could have rubbed me the wrong way really easily.
Yes.
Because I do not like it when a filmmaker's like, look how random I am.
It's why I don't this movie has a little bit of similar DNA to something like Kung Fu Hustle or like Shaolin Soccer. A little bit. Well, and I do not like those movies.
Oh, I would argue it has a huge amount of DNA. The part where she meets the villain daughter for the first time, they're literally doing cartoon sounds and cartoon music.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm at this. I don't hate Kung Fu Hustle or Shaolin Soccer, but it's not my favorite. I just
did not like them. So.
Right, and I don't like anything that's trying too hard to be random.
Yeah.
To like be like, oh, look how wild we are. And what makes this movie really fucking work is that all of that is justified.
Most of it. I mentioned one earlier that kind of pissed me off, and this was the moment of the movie where I like my brain kind of clicked, and the movie almost lost me, because I started thinking about it is taking a long time for this to get going. It's when James Hong's wheelchair suddenly goes 100 miles an hour and knocks Joy into the wall. I'm like, right, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
That doesn't make
and then I think Michelle Yeoh literally says, like, in this delivery, Alpha Gong Gong? Because, like, there's the idea that, like, there's alpha versions of them all, and, like, he's actually the big boss. I was like, okay. Like, the movie almost lost me there.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Because that legit doesn't make any sense in the rules of the movie, which is that why would his wheelchair also change?
Why would that happen? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we've established at this point that Joy is the only person who can bend reality.
Right. Yeah. That's the whole point.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah.
That is, I would call, the biggest plot hole of the movie. In a movie that... But again, this is... I guess that's why... So going back to the randomness and why this movie works is because being random is a really easy way to protect yourself from plot holes.
Yes.
And this movie holds itself to the standards that I can legitimately say, that's a plot hole. You did that wrong. That's a plot hole. Because you are doing the work. And so, like, I really, really appreciate the fact that they're doing the work. Mm-hmm. That almost everything is motivated, despite how fucking weird it all is.
Yeah. And that's, like, the only moment. Like I said, it did almost lose me, but it got me back. And there's something towards the end that I think might explain it, but it's not super clear. When James Hong stands up out of his wheelchair to help them hold Joy from getting sucked into the everything bagel, he has all these, like, kind of MacGyvered pieces of office equipment that are allowing him to walk. So maybe the idea is that he, like, souped up his wheelchair, but it's super, super unclear. And when we're in the middle of a movie where, like, we just got finished with a sequence of how this specific character can bend reality, and it's threatening all of existence, to have him suddenly rocket through on a chair with no explanation for the next hour.
Right. You are right, though, as I think that is legitimately what that's supposed to be.
I think that's what it's supposed to be, but it was super not clear at the time, nor for a great stretch of the movie was it clear.
Yeah, this isn't a defense of the movie, but it's possible they cut some stuff out.
Sure.
But obviously, like, it's not in the movie, so... but I do think that's what happens. You're right, because the look of his wheelchair is... I was trying to figure out what it is, and it's all office equipment. I think that's actually what happened.
I think that's the idea, but super unclear. It was it happened at the exact wrong moment for me, anyways. That it really was like, what? Wait a minute, like, can he do it too? Like, that's the first thing I thought, and I imagine, given the context of the scene, that's probably the first thing a lot of people thought when that happened.
Right?
Like, wait, can he bend reality too? What the fuck?
Yeah, that one moment, I would say, in general, is a tough moment, because what they were trying to do is they were trying to get them away from the villain.
Yes,
I think it's two things. I think it's really smart that they have that moment, which is like, that's the other thing about this film, is it's structured. It has the structure of, like, a superhero or martial arts or any action film where it's like, you introduce the villain early, they kick the hero's ass.
Yeah.
And that's what that moment is, but you have to get them then away from the villain. And if they're so powerful, so they had to do something. And then they realized they introduced this character who becomes important. So it's like a good moment for that, for a character to swoop in and save them. But you're right that it's very, that is very abrupt and weird.
Yep. Anyway,
I was still completely enamored by this film from start to finish. So like, I can't really say I looked at it much with a critical eye, because I just again, it's extremely my shit. Like, on top of the fact that I think the movie's good, it's just also extremely my shit.
Yeah.
And it's funny how like randomness like that can be extremely not my shit if it's not motivated.
Oh yeah.
I'll also say, you mentioned Rick and Morty. This kicks Rick and Morty's ass in terms of messaging, I think.
Oh yeah. Rick and Morty goes hard into nihilism, and that's valid. That's
it's
a
valid
viewpoint, but it's also very selfish.
Yeah, and this movie kind of just pats that nihilism on the head and points out, like, that's what I liked about the message, is the fact that they embrace nihilism and include it within it, and they recognize it. They don't turn away. It's not stupidly optimistic.
No.
And I really appreciate that, because it's taking something that seems like a real edgy truth, like the Rick and Morty stuff, and then layering another truth on top of it to show, like, yeah, that's not shit. Like that edgy teen nihilism.
It's I'm 16 and this is deep, or however old it is. It's like, you really think you're the first person to stumble upon this existentialism?
Exactly. Yeah. And so this movie takes that, starts with it, and then fucking demolishes it.
It's that just real profound moment with Short Round. About, like, I am making an active decision to do this. Like, that's the,
Right. There are so many fucking tear-jerking moments in this. Yeah. It's out of control. And it's like joy crying, it's sad crying, and then it's cry laughing, depending on your sense of humor.
Yeah.
It's so much. It's I'm just like, I'm very happy that people went along with this film.
Yeah.
Because again, big asks, big swings. It
takes
a dog and it swings it around, and the dog flies and collides with an object.
Yep.
They make it so that the dog is like into it, I guess. It's part of the weapon, is the dog like attacks when it hits. But it's like, that's a grotesque thing to do, but it's done in such a cartoony way that it's like, it reminds me of like in Idle Hands when he swings the cat by the tail. And it's like clearly a dummy cat.
It's Looney
that
Tunes.
Where it's like, it's Looney Tunes. They're doing Looney Tunes slapstick.
Yeah.
And so like that combination of like emotional moments, ridiculous slapstick, gross out humor, and flinch humor, the fucking paper cuts. It's like, I don't want to see that. Coupled with incredible performances, profound messages, and deeply emotional scenes. Like, god damn, that's a lot of moving parts.
It is. This is a very good movie.
Yeah, it's good for for the fact that it's dealing with so much stuff. Like, I'm jealous of this movie that it was able to balance that stuff as well as it is doing. And I'm sure some people hate this movie, but like the fact that most people like it is like, wow, like that's an accomplishment. Like, to make a movie this fucking weird that everybody's sort of embracing.
Yeah.
I'm
out of things to say.
Yeah, I'm just generally impressed by this film. I need to see Swiss Army Man, although I hear that movie is not nearly... I think that movie... I haven't heard much about it, but that's a more divisive movie, is what I'll say.
That is my impression of it as well.
Yeah, I think that movie was a little more like gross out and less...
More... the impression that I get... my understanding of that film is it's a little more absurd. Yeah.
Also, Michelle Yeoh, I see her as like a really respectable actress. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So to see her doing like Naked Gun level slapstick,
yeah,
it was like it was delightful.
She's also such a screen presence that I do occasionally forget she's a fucking ninja. Like, it's like, all right, she's a martial artist.
Right. They work that into this so well. They work it in like the movie The One does, where it's like, oh, I'm an everyman, and it's like, I know you're not an everyman.
Yeah, you're Jet Li.
Well, or the Tuxedo, I think, is the other, where they're like, oh, I know Kung Fu suddenly. It's like, I know you've always known Kung Fu.
Yeah.
I've seen the shit you do. Yeah.
I think Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh are better at disappearing into those kinds of roles than Jet Li. Jet Li's not much of an actor.
Absolutely. But yeah, Michelle Yeoh in this, it can't be overstated how good she is.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. Again, everybody's great. She is that first scene with her. She's so fucking good. Mm-hmm. The whole bit where she criticizes people and that's her way of caring about them. Mm-hmm. It's just, she's a treasure. She needs to do more comedy. Fuck, man. Yeah. Yeah, I got nothing more to say about this. Well, I have a lot more to say about it, but it's just like repeating how much I liked the movie.
Yeah, I think we've done we've fulfilled our obligation.
We fulfilled our obligation for sure. So thanks for listening, everybody. And
thank you.
If you're interested, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. If you go on there, there's exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, Spiel Boys. Mm-hmm. Those are all there for just $5 a month. You get access to all those. Every Friday night we watch movies with our patrons. That's at $10 a month. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to love over at our Patreon.
There's a whole multiverse of possibilities on our Patreon. A similar multiverse exists. We have a store. If you want to go to gamefullyunemployed.com, we have a link there to our Teespring store where you can find all kinds of cool original artwork and designs that you can get on t-shirts and stickers and posters and shit. So look at that.
Yeah.
Do that thing.
Do that. Would you rather have hot dog fingers or, I don't know, a raccoon controlling you?
I'd rather have a raccoon pal.
Yeah, that wasn't hard. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's a pretty easy one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because the universe still seems pretty much like ours, except raccoons are sentient and friendly.
Yeah.
And want to help me succeed at a hibachi.
Okay, well, that's the thing is only that raccoon. So that's a universe where it's just the one.
As far as we know.
As far as we know, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
There could be more
blew
raccoons.
your goddamn mind.